and she's always been a great supporter and comes to our fly-ins, so we really appreciate her being here, and we're looking forward to hearing what she has to say. So let's welcome Representative McCollum.
The day with Tom Workman. Now, we try to keep it a secret, but I think it's time everybody knew. Tom and I got elected to serve in the Minnesota House together, and it's always nice to see you, Tom. And it's good to be here with the Alliance and the fly-ins. And I know that you work both back in Minnesota and here in Washington D.C. And so it's always. It's good to see you. I want to thank you for all the work that you folks are doing on a regular basis with our district office as well. And I have to tell you, you're here at a really critical time. We say that a lot because, you know, maybe there's a project we want to push through or something we're working on. This is a critical time because, in my opinion, the President's budget is really alarming in a lot of ways, but it's very alarming for transit and transportation. But I'll focus a little more on transit in some of my remarks here. And I think in part it's just for two reasons. One, Mr. Trump hasn't served in local government. He hasn't served in county government. He hasn't served in state government. And his first job in federal government is in the administrative branch, it's not in the legislative branch. And so he doesn't come with a lot of tools in the toolbox on how projects develop and how they work. Yes, he's a developer, but he kind of comes in working on buildings kind of at the end, and then maybe, you know, a little bit for some streetscape or something like that as approaches, but, you know, the whole core infrastructure, what it means you know, to keep farm-to-market roads going, what it means for counties with, you know, coming out, and municipalities coming out of the deep recession, and our states coming out of the deep recession. I mean, we have been cut to the bone. Transit projects have been, you know, delayed. Transportation projects and bridge projects, you know the needs in your districts and how long that they've been on the wait list, right? As the state dug itself out, and now as the federal government continue to move forward. So the President, you know, put out a skinny budget, and the dollars that were in there for transportation, for moving people around, for moving goods around, were quite alarming. And this infrastructure bill is going to rely heavy on tilting public-private partnerships. And I think that that's important. I mean, we do that in Minnesota on a lot of things. But the federal government still has a role to play in maintaining the federal highway system and in expanding the highway system where appropriate. But also it has a role in building for the next gen, which is transit, which is a huge part. And I know many of you have had opportunities to go around and travel in other parts of the country and see firsthand how, you know, and I'll just use Denver for an example, but I could use parts of California, I could use, you know, Washington State and Oregon, where they are working with the business community, and you see your sponsors up here. I mean, 3M's in the heart of the 4th District, where they are working with businesses, and I've listened to the business leaders say, this is what we need to do to be competitive in this region. This is what the new workers are looking for in this region. And in some cases, you know, if you go into St. Paul, you're up against a river bluff in some of our places. We can't expand our roads any farther. So we have to look at innovative ways in which to do it. So public-private partnerships are great, but if we aren't putting the kinds of things on the table, like transit, that these companies like 3M and, you know, I can mention the ones in Hennepin County, are looking for, we're going to lose out. We are going to lose out. And if the Twin Cities and the surrounding communities, and I say this as a person who started out in a suburban city council, if we don't look dynamically strong and like we're moving forward and have a can-do attitude on getting goods to market as well as people to work, we are going to find ourselves in a real world of hurt 10 or 15 years from now. So I'm going to just, like I said, I care about roads and bridges. Tom can tell you, I vote for them. I voted for, road projects in rural Minnesota and bridges in rural Minnesota. But our fates are tied together as one state. As Rochester goes, I want Rochester and St. Cloud and Duluth and Austin, I want them all to be healthy, and I know that they want the Twin Cities to be healthy too. Our fates are tied together. So when Tiger grants are totally abolished in the president's budget, and New Starts are totally abolished, and if we can't get the Congressional Budget Committee here in the House to talk about and say that that's important, if I can't get the appropriators to say that that's important as we put together our appropriations bills, that zero stays a zero, and that means big trouble for us as a metropolitan region, as one state, keeping our anchor companies. Because each one of these companies and the Fortune 500 companies that are in the I don't want to say the greater Twin Cities area, because some of them aren't in Minneapolis and they aren't in the 4th District. If they decide to leave, we lose the international airport as a competitive hub. We lose that. What happens to Flying Cloud? What happens to Duluth? What happens to all those commuter things we are interdependent on one another? So we have to move and speak forward. Flashes to Amtrak. We were all set. The Empire Builder was all set, and still continues to want to add another rail line on. And if laptops go away on airplanes, folks, I can tell you right now in this corridor, people do not fly from D.C. to New York. They take the train because they can use their laptops and they can work. And they're not going through the security lines. And so we have to be thinking about that as one state. How do we help each other? How do I make sure that the farm-to-market roads are there, the roads and the bridges are safe in rural parts of the district? But we also have to think about how we keep our two big core cities competitive, and then how we keep these regional assets that we have competitive. So I'm very concerned also about Southwest Rail. And Tom and I probably voted on different sides on this on and off over the years. But you go to any of the other up-and-coming anchors, you go to any of the other places that we are competing regionally and nationally with, and they are all investing in rail. And the letter that the legislators sent saying, get rid of the Southwest Rail Project, give us the money, that is legally impossible to do, folks. The same thing that happened to us when Governor Walker turned back the high-speed rail, let me tell you what happened on the House floor. People from Florida, Texas, Seattle, New York, they all came up and said, Betty, would you sign the letter to give us your money? And I said, no, I'm still got my fingers and toes crossed. The same thing will happen with Southwest. For every dollar that we pay into federal taxes, and I know there's some people who don't want to pay any federal taxes, and but the reality right now is, for every dollar that we pay in federal taxes, we only get 75 cents back on that dollar. We are a donor state. So to give that money back, rather than invest it in the future, in Minnesota, in my opinion, is very foolish. And I know, talking to legislators afterwards that the mechanisms to let Southwest move forward in the legislative bills that the governor signed are there, passed by Republican House and Senate, but nothing, that doesn't send as clear a message as that letter by communities that, in my opinion, aren't taking how we need to be into this as one Minnesota. So whether it's Southwest Light Rail, the Gold Line, or Riverview, and by the way, when I say the numbers don't work, when people came in and said, well, we want rail, you know, we have to have rail for Gold Line, I said, let's look at the numbers. And the county commissioners, Ramsey and Washington, put pen to pencil, and they said, nah, it doesn't work. But you know what? We are going to be very frugal. We are going to do something that hasn't been done in Minnesota before. We're going to do a dedicated bus, not a shoulder bus, but BRT, so that when 20 or 30 years from now, the numbers tip, we will have made a smart investment for the people of Minnesota and for the people of this region, because we will have something in which you can put rail on. And that's the kind of thinking Minnesotans usually do. What makes sense for today and what's going to be a solid foundation for tomorrow. And unfortunately, I don't see this as of yet in the transportation bills in front of us from the administration. But I want you to know, I'm going to stand up for the 4th District, I'm going to stand up for the state of Minnesota, and I'm going to stand up for the United States right now, because we are in an economic, competitive system worldwide like we've never seen before. And in my opinion, and I think the facts will bear me out, with what just happened with the Paris Climate Agreement, for a lot of our manufacturers that are into solar and wind, which are good engineering jobs, good jobs for the future, and good labor jobs, we have put ourselves at a huge competitive disadvantage. So in my opinion, we can't afford another one. So we have to get this transportation bill right. We have to get it right now, because we have a backlog of infrastructure just in roads and bridges that we deserve to get right for Minnesota, and we deserve to get it right for all across Minnesota. And we have to stop pitting part of Minnesota against another part of Minnesota. We have to work together as one family, because if we don't, Colorado is, Washington State is, Oregon is, in fact, the whole East Coast up here, they've got it together, and Florida's coming on strong, and Texas isn't sitting back. So I don't want to be donating any dollars that can be spent in Minnesota to make our company stronger, to get people to work, and that can also make us more globally competitive. I want to keep our Fortune 500 companies. So I think you're here at a real critical time. We might not agree on every little nuance, but I think we can all agree that Minnesota should not be donating transportation dollars to other parts of the United States. So with that, I just wanted to talk about that.